welcome to all of you for hopping on our Q&A session, and especially Meade, who is staying up late in the US. Your dedication is inspiring, and it's what makes our community so special. And we are recording this whole conversation, so those who are interested to apply and couldn't make it, they could watch it later today on YouTube. And so we are all here to spark some excitement about our alumni, about stepping into the facilitator's role for the upcoming CELA'17 Academy. And so your stories, insights, and wisdoms you're ready to share are pure gold. And so before we go further, let's kick things off with introductions of our lineup of experienced facilitators. So we have here Meade Sutterfiled. Hi, Meade.
Hello.
One of the original masterminds behind CELA and other networks, and the SIBF member. His vision brought us all together, and we are so lucky, actually, to have him share his insights today. We also have Marina Guledani here. Hi, Marina, from CELA, Georgia. We have Hikmat Abdurahmanov from CELA, Uzbekistan. We have Jarkyn Samanchina from CELA, Kyrgyzstan. And we have Raheel Waqar from CELA, Pakistan, joining us today. Welcome, Raheel. Let's get started. The first question to our facilitators is, what actually inspired you to become a CELA facilitator, or in case of Raheel, SEALA facilitator? And how has your motivation evolved over the course of facilitating multiple academies, if this is the case? So let's start from Meade, please.
Well, I had to become a facilitator to create the program. And so basically, I've done this 30 times. The reason I keep coming back, which perhaps is even more interesting, is because I know everybody in the frame here through meeting them in an academy. I've been a facilitator for several. The close relationships you develop over time, the amount Susan and I have grown in our marriage and figured out better how to deal with our kids. It's a true lifetime experience. It's a commitment, as anybody who's done it knows. It's 12 days actually, of really working as hard as I work. But on the other hand, the reward is enormous.
Great, thank you. Marina, what about you?
I'm raising 2 daughters. I'm a single mother. I'm engaged in professional work, which is being a policy lawyer, mostly focusing on reforms and drafting legislation, working with the government. And then I spend a lot of time on personal development, which is one of the very important components of my life, and something that's pushed me, and push is probably not the right term, which motivated me actually to do the facilitation. Because I did it only after 6 years of participation in CELA as a participant. I did it only after I felt that I have something to share and give, instead of taking away. So for me, it was a feeling of fullness and feeling of contribution, the desire to contribute. And of course, the expectation was the connection, human connection. That I think is the most important part.
Hikmat, what about you?
So what I do here in Uzbekistan, as many of us have different roles. Doing business, first of all, I have a financial company working with SMEs, helping them to start their businesses. Also, we have a chain of co-working spaces. So I work with entrepreneurs on a daily basis, and not only participate in communities, but also create business communities here in Uzbekistan. And for the last 4 years, I'm in education, as you can see, Team University. And so I teach and help this university to create entrepreneurs. So on a personal level, I am very much engaged in talking to young leaders and trying to help them create their projects and share knowledge. So coming back to your question, why I decided to join as a facilitator is, first of all, because that helps me grow personally, and I really enjoy CELA network. So that's a perfect excuse to come back again and again. And so these are the reasons. I have done this 2 times already, so cannot say that I'm an experienced one, but every time I do that, I enjoy it. And as Marina said, I also didn't do that right after my personal participation. It took me 5 years to realize that I'm ready to come back and serve in a more responsible role. But I enjoy it. I've done once with MELA, once with CELA.
Thank you, Hikmat. Raheel, what about you?
My journey has been an entrepreneurial journey. I've started very young. I was 21 when I started my first company. Did that for 5 years, and then I started another company, which I still co-founded and still part of it. And the company that I do, the work that I primarily do is behavior design work, which in simple words means how do you get people to change their behavior. A lot of our work is centered around impact. So I work with nonprofits, organizations like the UN, and very grassroots behavior change work that I do. But over the last couple of years, I think something that I was inspired by when I went to CELA was the opportunity to work with people individually. And that got me into the coaching realm. So I got certified as a coach. And the second hat I wear these days is I do a lot of leadership-based work, individual coaching and with teams. So what brought me here is Meade is the first person. Meade was my facilitator at CELA too. And so he was an inspiration throughout. And I think the breakthrough that happened, and we'll talk about that as we go on, about the learning groups, I think, that truly inspired. But I'm very lucky that I have two of my co-facilitators in the room as well. So Eka and Chopin, we co-facilitated this year as well. And I think it's this community, is this, as Meade earlier said, the connections you build, the like-minded community. Where would you find a bunch of people like this in any part of the world? And I think that's what brought me back as well. I wanted to experience it again as an observer. But then, it just takes over. And so I think I've done 5 academies. I've done MELA once, and the rest was CELA, and hopefully doing NALA this year.
What an experience you have, Raheel. Thank you. Jarkyn, what about you?
Hello one more time. By academic background, I majored in international relations and political science. But I've been working in the nature conservation field for the past 20 years. So I'm a wildlife conservationist, basically. What inspired me to become a facilitator? There are probably 3 things. The first one is my facilitators. I had Bobby and Paulette at my CELA'17 Academy, and it was an incredible experience. The second reason was probably curiosity. I think a lot of people are interested to know what's happening on the other side of the fence, so to say. And the third one is I realized that if you really want to be part of CELA, you have to give back, as Marina said earlier. So I first started engaging in interviews. I helped to interview CELA'14, 15, 16. Today it's going to be CELA'17. And then I also facilitated 2 academies, 15 and 16. And I don't know, it's probably to the end of this session, but I already encourage you to apply. There are 2 days left, and you will never regret it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jarkyn. So the next question is, but how has your ongoing involvement as a facilitator enhanced your own skills and experience in your day job and just in your life? Marina.
Well, of course, this is a huge experience, and it enhances your abilities on many levels. Of course, these connections enrich you as a person. When you listen to so many stories that people share during the facilitation, in such group work, you always do project your own emotional layers, and pains and experiences come up as well. So you basically co-live and co-experience with the participants, and this is always a very enriching experience, and it basically makes you a stronger person and more feeling person, more sensitive, which is something you strive for if you want to really develop spiritually. So that spirituality which comes from these connections is really something I always look for in all types of experiences and processes that they go through, and this was one of the very significant parts of that. So it's very precious, really very precious.
Thank you, Marina. Meade, what about you?
I mentioned earlier that the relationship with Susan, it was enhanced, but I'm more patient. I think that CELA has allowed more of the emotional quotient to come out. Paulette would be very proud to hear that, although it's been going on for 20 years. And I think that has allowed me to lead in a little different technique than I did before, maybe a much more different technique. And I'm able to do things I couldn't do before. To me, that's been great. It's easier to make friends now. I have so many great friends on this call, but being more open and to friendship, I think, is something that's come from the years I've been doing this.
Great. Raheel, what about you?
So I think every time I go back, I just learned so much more about myself. So it's like an ongoing journey and an ongoing journey of self-discovery, I guess. And as Meade said, I think it transforms you at each layer. So how you show up, I think, completely changes in any relationship, either it be at work, at home. I think I'm a better father. I'm a better husband, a better manager because of this. And I think, at the core, when you enter a space like this and when you're all in, I think, we talk about the participants experiencing and, having these transformations. I feel as facilitators, there's so much that you take back as well. There's so much that you gain in terms of insight, diversity, perspective, and deep empathy, and the ability to really understand people at a very different level. So I can go on, but I think, fundamentally, I am a different and a better version of myself since I've been part of the Academy.
Okay, Jarkyn?
I think facilitating experience at CELA Academy made me more emotionally intelligent, more patient. It taught me to take things with grace and also humble, because there's so many amazing people, really accomplished, with lots of achievements, very interesting, very fun. And you just, look at them and you learn and you become amazed and you take that back with you. In my daily life, I'm a country director, so I treat my staff, my colleagues differently now. I'm really, really more patient and I'm just letting people be. And that's one of the things we do in the CELA Academy as facilitators. We give space and let people be and express themselves.
Great. Hikmat?
Yeah, I could, agree with everything that has been said, but if not to repeat them, I can say that imagine that you come to a room with approximately a dozen of people who are very successful in their own lives. And normally, in my case, they were elder in age, more experienced, more successful, smarter people than I was. And every time I leave the room, I feel that I have learned something. So it really helps you to develop your own leadership style and really helps you to, as Meade perfectly said, being emotionally more intelligent. And it just helps you to be a happy person, I would say.
All right, thank you. My next question is, so if someone is unsure about applying to facilitate for the first time, what advice or encouragement would you offer them? And what helped you actually to take this decision? Raheel?
I think the question that one should ask themselves is that where do they see themselves going? And like when we look at our legacy, there's like when you look at these dreams that people have, there's always this element of giving back, and I think we talked about that earlier. And I think there's no beautiful way than being in a space, holding a space for others to experience something, and witnessing that transformation. Because what I believe in is that if you transform one person, you've not transformed them, you've transformed a generation of people that follow that person. So I feel that it is a plunge. You've got to trust the process. You don't know what's going to come, because it's an experience that everyone goes through differently. But it's like an experience you never want to miss. It's like that roller coaster ride that you hear about, but until you don't go on it, you will never experience what it really means to be on that. And I think all the academies are a roller coaster ride. There's the highs and the lows, but then by the end, you end up in a very different space. So I think coming in, what's crucial is that you're curious, you're all in. That's very important. You bring in a beginner's mindset. You're not the expert in the room. You're not here to give advice. You're not a consultant. And I think facilitation is also, it's very important to understand what facilitation is and what it isn't, because a lot of our day jobs require us to step in as an expert, as someone who knows the answer. And here you're really, really here to ask powerful questions, to be present, to just hold that space, as it said. So I think for me that mindset is very important coming into it. But it's like any experience, you won't know until you go out and do it.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Hikmat, what advice or encouragement would you give to newcomers?
I think very basic ones. There is a facilitator commitment letter. One should read it carefully. It's really much straightforward. What is your role? Participate on the calls. There are few preparatory calls organized by more experienced team members. And I think the only, let's say, suggestion I would say is that come with that readiness to learn and be ready to just contribute and let it happen. Don't try to control the situation. Don't try to be in control of this, because this is something absolutely, most probably, that you have never experienced. And that magic that transforms a few dozens of people has been happening for many, many years already. So you need to enjoy the process and be all in.
Great. Meade, what about you?
Well, I think looking at it from someone who's never done it, you've been through an academy or you wouldn't be on this call. But I think the training that Susan and Jenny put together, now Paulette, for the first 2 days, I think really helps, because people are nervous before you do this. I was nervous the first time I did this and we had no template. Now we have some idea. And so you won't be left adrift in a boat. You'll have some guidance as to what to do. And I think it opens up a way for you to lead a little differently, because it's much more passive in terms of letting things happen and guiding rather than managing. So I think that if you really can commit to the 12 days, 2 days of training and 10 days of an academy, I think the guidance is there, and no one comes through this without being changed. And it's an incredible midlife commitment to changing and helping yourself and those around you. So I'd encourage people to apply and realize if you do get the opportunity to do it.
Jarkyn, what kind of advice you would give to newcomers, those who are hesitating?
Well, first of all, do not hesitate. Please do apply. My main advice would probably be to come very open-minded and leave all your anxieties and egos and whatever there might be problems behind. Be present, be always aware, self-aware, and also aware of the participants that you are in a way responsible for. Yeah, it's probably the most important thing to take care of people, and just to remember that you've already had your share at your academy, and now it's not about you, it's all about these new participants, and your responsibility is to help them to go through this process as smoothly and as successful as possible. And the second thing is probably to do your best to partner with your co-facilitator, because it's the two of you who are in a way dancing and helping to create this harmonious environment where people can transform and learn and grow. So probably that's what I would advise.
Thank you. That's a great advice. Marina, how would you encourage newcomers?
Yeah, well, I think it's clear that this is a very exceptional experience, and if people are listening, they are hearing all of this. But I would like to say two things. One, if somebody is hesitating and it's about being conscious or afraid that they will not manage, I would like to recall Meade's words. There was so much support and so much guidance. I have done it only once, and of course I was also worried that I don't know how to do this. I read literature, there was preparatory work, but I got so much support on the ground because I was paired with a very experienced co-facilitator. He gave so much space to me during the facilitation. Of course, I made mistakes in the process, probably, but There was no judgment, and I basically felt like a participant, a facilitator during this process, and it was a very special experience for me. So if you are hesitating because you are worried that you don't know how to do this, this is really something you shouldn't be worried about, because it's a process, and you get a lot of support, as Meade said. These are amazing people that have done it many times, and I was very well placed and paired with amazing co-facilitator Ashok. The second thing I want to say is that you really have to make a conscious decision, because this requires your absolute undivided full presence during those 12 days. There is no time or mental capacity for anything else in your life. So if this is not a conscious decision to be there, it will be draining. So you have to be careful about understanding yourself and your motivation, why you want to do this. And in my opinion, it has to be a position from which you want to give. Yes, of course, we take back a lot, and of course, it's a balance and an exchange, but you have to be in a position of really conscious will to share, contribute, participate, and get as a result of this. So these are the 2 points I wanted to mention.
Thank you, Marina. And Ashok is indeed amazing. Much love to Ashok. So we've got a question from Umid John. What would you do differently if you facilitated several times? And we have a champion here, Meade Sutterfiled.
I think, well, you learn, like anything, after you do it a few times, you learn how to be a little less in control and trust the process. That's a set of words that everyone here has heard. You see all the nodding heads. Trust the process, it works. So perhaps trust the process. Something I do, which Raheel heard for the first time in CELA 2, was that it was our goal as co-facilitators, Kudabushk and I, to let the group take over as quickly as possible. Tell them, sort of help them understand the process we were going through, and then step back and let them manage their own process. And that's something I've tried to achieve in every group I've ever had. Is almost like a business school prof, just point and let people talk, not try to give advice or anything else. I think the best facilitators do the least. And Ashok is amazing because he's so gentle and stands back and gives people space. And that's probably the main thing. The more years you do this, the further back you're able to take yourself and let it happen around you instead of because of you.
So basically, let things flow, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So as a follow-up question, how do you strike a balance between empowering participants to arrive at their own insights and sharing your personal views and experience?
Just from my point of view, we really aren't there to give our advice. Some advice that I give people for the first time is you get to tell one great story, so choose it carefully, because it's not about you. So that's been said by many other people here. It's not about advice. If after the learning group, when people one-on-one at lunch or whatever, they seek you out and ask you questions, and you might answer them. But the reality is, in the group, the idea is to let people know what they need to do. They just don't allow themselves to speak it out loud. And that's one of the great benefits of a learning group, is you figure that out. So the less you say as a facilitator, the better all things are.
Great, thank you. Raheel, as a facilitator, how do you actually create this safe space for participants to be vulnerable and build trust within the group? Can you perhaps share some of the examples?
Right. So that's, I think, a very, very important question. And I think you can only be vulnerable if you are vulnerable, right? If you show up with the fact that the more vulnerable you are, the more vulnerability you bring in the conversation, and the more vulnerable someone else will be. And that also links up with role modeling the way. If you really are at the surface, your group is going to be at the surface. If you're ready to go deep enough and open up and share, your group is going to follow the lead. So I think the key thing here is that being in the flow, as said, being present. And I think, we implied about that conversation earlier on. What does presence mean? You physically were present, for sure, but are we emotionally, mentally there? Are we really, really listening in to the conversations that are taking place, the things that are being said and that are not being said? Because there's a lot that's not being said that is crucial. And if you're not curious enough, if you're not present enough, you'll miss out those cues. So I just to summarize this, I think how you show up is key. And like Meade said, the art is to speak less, but whenever you do speak, you really take the conversation forward. You allow people to go deep enough, and again, lead the process from the get-go.
All right, thank you. Well, facilitation per se can be an intensive experience. How do you guys ensure that you are in a stable place, like physically, mentally, and emotionally, to show up fully for participants? Jarkyn?
It's a very good question, actually, because there's so much happening during every academy, and I think you have to be really well disciplined to be able to show up, as has been said earlier. As much as you want to socialize and have fun at parties after sessions, I think you have to know your share, and when it's enough and when it's time to leave and go and get good sleep and get ready for the next day's session. So I think it's about discipline, because the program is really very, very intensive, and you can't go through it if you try to go in all the various directions, being a facilitator, having fun, and so on. So just be structured and disciplined.
Okay, Marina, what about you?
Yes, I agree with every word Jarkyn just said, but one thing I would add is that it's not only about how you behave or how you conduct yourself during those 12 days, but generally being prepared for this experience. And I refer back to my own words in answer to the previous question. If you are in a conscious position and in a fullness position, you are able to go through this process. And this is really important, to be there from the fullness position and really wanting to do this, rather than doing this from a deficient spot where you yourself have some issues, unresolved issues, psychologically, mentally, physically, etc. And in addition to what Jarkyn said, you cannot really do in parallel other things. I mean, there are some situations where people try to do other things. I've noticed this in participants who do not understand, and then they realize, and of course, stop doing this because it's physically impossible. You have to be there. You have to be present. There is nothing else you can do other than being there. You have to be really consciously wanting to be there. That's what I would say. And that's what helps you to stay stable, because then you are balanced and then nothing is pulling you back.
Thank you. Hikmat, what about your approach?
Yeah, so I agree that this is definitely not a part-time job. This is like something that takes all of your energy, your attention, and your time. So before applying, I think at least that worked for me, is that I spent an hour or so to understand why I'm applying, and am I ready for that, as Marina and Jarkyn mentioned previously, that it has to be your mental state. You realize that you're ready to go through this, you're ready to share some stories. You need to understand that you would be working on your own, let's say, problems and life situations together with CELA participants at the same level, or even maybe on a more engaged level, because you have to lead the way, you have to be very honest, and you have to be sincere. So it's a big decision, and one should go through this thoroughly in his or her own.
Great. Thank you very much. So I just made some notes. So this job, if to sum up, this job requires you to be mature, emotionally stable, I mean, in a good mental and physical state, because it's a long hours. Nobody of you mentioned that, actually. It's a long hours. I mean, I want some of you to talk about the actually mechanics of this. Then it requires a lot of patience, being humble, non-judgmental, giving back, being all in. Can anyone talk about actually the mechanics, how things work, so people understand that it's not a part-time thing, not a 2-hour thing, not a thing where you can just scroll your Instagram during the sessions or during the group work? What time you actually get up every day and what time you go to bed?
Structure is that, well, everyone on the call has been through an academy, so they start at 9, generally end up 4:30 to 5:30. We have a meeting in the morning for an hour beforehand to go through what we're going to do, what we expect to do in the learning group that day. Generally, the speakers come in and give us a briefing if it's something we need to help with. And then at the end of the day, you spend time with your co-facilitator kind of thinking through what you've done, what the next group should do, who's going to take what role in that group. For me, I get up at 6 because I try to exercise every morning because that's the only time I have the energy, and I go to bed early. I'll come back after dinner, and basically I'll work on emails, my own business, for about an hour or two, and I'm usually in bed by 9 or 9:30. So that's probably a little extreme. You're younger than I am, but that way I don't feel like I run out of energy at the end.
Great. Thank you.
May I make a comment? Because I think that if you're viewing this, if you've never done this, that one of the things you notice about the people who are on this call who have done it is the maturity level for young people that they've achieved, young relative to me. And I think that this experience really takes your maturity forward because you see the world differently. And facilitating is an exhilarating experience. It's a joyous experience, but it also, you cannot see the world the same way you saw it before you do it the first time. And it makes you a better leader in every way. And as Raheel said, a better parent, a better spouse, because you see things more broadly and you understand at a level. And I know all of you and have known you for years, and some of you were in my learning group. And it's a joy to go through this and see how people mature. And that's something that, without fail, being a facilitator helps that process of truly growing up.
Thank you, Meade. That's very inspiring. And actually, it's a good start for concluding points.
So I would just say that, there's a lot of wisdom, just that's spilled over, and it's going to take time for people to absorb all of this and take it back and process this in terms of what it means for them. But, as said, that you only tread on paths when you take chances. Opportunities open up when you explore new things. And I don't see a better way to experience the world, experience yourself, the world within you and the world outside you, than an academy like this. I think it's a blessing to have it in this day and age, to be able to connect with people, and as I said, soulful people. Even if it means that whatever your need is, if you're going there to observe this, to experience it, to learn from it, I think everyone takes something back, no matter where you're coming from. So I would just say, take the plunge. I think there's no one that's ever regretted this. The only thing that we regret is that we could do more academies, more facilitation. We wish we have that time, and be with the same people. You just can't wait for the next academy to happen. So give it a shot, and it's going to transform you completely. For sure.
Thank you. Hikmat, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I would just encourage people to try. After you summarized everything, Dina, it sounded to me that you need to be a perfect person to join the club. It's not the case. It's definitely not the case. It might sound that you need to be well prepared, but I mean, if you have gone through this CELA Academy experience, you already qualify. I mean, there's a pre-qualification. There's no one that can come from outside and be the facilitator. So I think, so you just need to try. And it is any other things in our lives, especially in our part of the world, it is really difficult to realize the notion that making mistakes is completely okay. And that will happen. And we have more experienced facilitators to lead and help us and support us. So I think you should just give it a try and enjoy the process.
Thank you. Marina?
Yes, I fully agree with Hikmat. If you are thinking that you would like to do it, you just should do it without any reservations. Because in my personal experience, I had this voice in my head, no, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not doing it. As soon as I got, yes, I want to do it, I did it. So totally, you should come and try, and there are senior, more experienced people involved that will hold you and give you the space. So definitely that's something to be done. And another thing that I wanted to say is that I had my own separate CELA experience within the facilitators groups in the morning. So there's so much depth in that relationship. I learned about people, such meaningful connections that take place on that level as well. And some of the people that are there that I knew better, I came to know even deeper, and that was very fulfilling and pleasant experience, and so much love that I took away from that space as well. Very, very special for me as well. So you basically become very connected with the facilitators group as a standalone separate process, and that's very special, and that's another reason to apply.
Thank you, Marina. Jarkyn.
Yeah, I totally echo what Marina said and what Hikmat said. No hesitation, apply, but beware that it can be quite addictive. So the more you facilitate, the more you want to become a facilitator again and again and again. It's serious. I mean, it's partially fun, but it's also quite addictive. You get to know people, you get to love them, you develop new friendships. It's a totally different experience. It's like CELA Academy next step up. Apply.
Right, and we are now in the process of building a pool of great facilitators. So do not hesitate, apply. As we complete this session, I just want to remind that during this session, we learned that what inspired facilitators to join the team, how facilitating enhanced their skills and experience in their day jobs and just in their life. And we also got some advice and encouragement for first-time facilitators. I want to thank all of our speakers. Meade, thank you. Jarkyn, thank you very much. Raheel, Hikmat, Marina, please apply to facilitate at CELA'17 Academy in July in Astana.